graduate together at UP, but how did you get started in this profession and why did you choose it?
I think, to be honest, this profession chose me because in the beginning, I enrolled in physiology and biochemistry as an undergraduate, but I've struggled with the mandatory math courses since advanced math wasn't my strong suit. So luckily, most of the first year subjects in health sciences allowed me to switch over to physiology and microbiology, and those two subject combinations didn't require maths. So it was actually during my third year that I actually fell in love with microbiology, and I made the intentional decision to say this is a career path I want to pursue. So and then it led me to my postgraduate studies.
Yeah. And it's funny that you mentioned maths. And I think there's this thing that people, when you have to do like sciences, you have to be like an excellent mathematician. Most of us aren't. And it should free up people in terms of like you can actually do this. Obviously, you need to like understand the basics and stuff because of lab work and other things that you have to do, but you don't have to be like an excellent mathematician to do this.
Yes, we don't have to be the next Albert Einstein.
Definitely. So I think you've covered everything there in terms of like your educational background, and then in the training that you went through to become a biological scientist. Can you talk to us about that?
So, according to, if you want to practice as a scientist in South Africa, the basic or the minimum requirements is the NQF8. So that means you will have to have a 3-year degree, undergraduate degree, plus an honors. Or nowadays, I know most of the university already include honors in the degree, and then you are pursuing a 4-year degree. So that's the bare minimum you need to have. But in my experience, having an MSc and PhD is it's not essential, but it's always an advantage, and it will just give you that one step forward to make it easier or make you stand out from the crowd.
Yeah, that's true. I think also when people are hiring, if you have an MSc, they will mostly like unfortunately, take graduates with an MSc and above. And if you have an honors, if if your marks look really good, then maybe. But most of the time, with my experience of that's what I'm starting to see, that MSc and above, you have a better chance of getting the internship.
Yes, same here. I do agree with that observation.
Okay. And then in terms of your day-to-day responsibilities, where you are currently working, if you don't mind, if you can tell us where you're currently based and the type of research that you're doing, so you can sort of like describe a typical day or a week in your role.
Currently, I'm holding a joint appointment. So the majority of my time as a senior scientist, no 2 days are the same. And also daily activities depend on the current needs and developments in the laboratory. So for instance, at the end of the month, my responsibilities often include overseeing stock taking, reviewing and reporting laboratory stats. That means how many samples we've processed, whether any stock outs, etc. And also then managing our lab budget and ensuring that the necessary orders for supplies and reagents are placed in a timely manner. But also as a senior scientist, you have a little bit extra responsibilities that involve more complex tasks such as outbreak investigation or the analysis of emerging trends in disease samples. So in our lab specific, and particularly in the winter months, we see an increase in specific pathogens. For example, Bordetella pertussis and Pneumocystis jirovecii, which is associated with our pneumonia, especially in our younger populations. So that's no 2 days are the same.
And when we go back to maths, it looks like you need that background.
Yes.
And then how do you prioritize and manage your workload? Because I think even as for early career scientists, that's where they might struggle because it's not the same as managing your MSc, for example. Now you now have these expectations and responsibilities that you're responsible for. So how do you go about that?
So yeah, it's difficult because of being jointly appointed. So you have your lab duties as well as your lecturing duties. So for me, it's always important to communicate, to inform my manager as well as my colleagues. If I have an exam that I have to invigilate or I have a lecture, because at that day that will take priority. But also, it's great to have or be part of a team because then we can divide task and then work collaboratively on it. So if something was assigned to me and I communicate early on to say, I can do A, B, and C, but I won't have time for option D, E, and F, then we can proactively divide and say or assign it to someone else. So that allows us to tackle them concurrently and then also make sure that the deadlines are met. But I think it also depends on your personality. But I think from my recent or my years of experience, communication is key. And also having a great laboratory manager or supervisor that also knows all the task involves and not just see one aspect.
Yeah, that's true. And for example, when I applied for this job, sometimes you don't know that you're actually gonna have like a dual role in terms of what the university expects from you and what the lab expects from you. And then when you get there and you're sort of like shocked. And I know also that it's not everyone. Some scientists only get to do like laboratory work and are not linked to a university. So, but definitely being jointly appointed come with extra tasks and more work.
Yes, and not you're not being paid more for that.
That
So
is
it's more
true.
So yeah, it's more difficult to manage your task and also being a lecturer and taking on postgraduate students. Sometimes it does, but I think we will still come to that sort of like it overlaps in your personal time because you have
Yeah.
to review protocols or maybe you're pulled into a postgraduate committee that will involve reviewing a MSc project or a PhD thesis at the end of the year. So it's complex.
Yeah, it is. So in terms of challenges and rewards, I think we just touched on that. What are the biggest challenges in your field or in this field that you've noticed that we face as medical scientists?
So I think it's not necessarily a personal struggle, but I think a more general struggle as scientists, especially after training a few intern scientists, we do have job shortages in permanent positions. So that a primary challenge is it makes it for the professionals that just graduated as an intern and they are ready to be appointed as an entry medical scientist. They can't find stable long-term employment, and that's also there will be then a lack of training opportunities and publishing and researching because they don't have a permanent position, only a contract position, for example. And then with contract positions, normally supervisors only allow them to focus on the current project that they are hired for. So they don't get an opportunity to, for example, to apply for their own grants or start a small research project or have the opportunity then to train other postgraduate students or intern medical scientists.
Yeah, that's true, especially applying for grants. I think that's what I've heard other scientists complain about, that if you're a temp, but you have all these ideas, but you can't really hold a grant because you don't have a permanent position, which makes it difficult to, in some cases, pursue your own ambitions and trying to develop new projects and things like that. So that is very limiting.
Yeah, and for me, if I can use myself as an example, for 4 years I had a contract position. So luckily, my supervisor allowed me to be part of managing her research grant, but still the research grants wasn't in my name. So for the last 2 years, I only got a permanent position, but now you start from scratch. So even though you have 6 years or more of experience, applying for a grant, they still see you as a new scientist
Yes.
or a newbie entering the field. So they're still reluctant to give you the grant, even though now you are permanent.
Yeah, that's true. That is really true. Funding is a challenge once you get in the field. It's a challenge. But what do you find most rewarding about what you do?
I think for me, it's the mentorship and guidance, helping younger scientists and entry scientists to tell them what my struggles were and what worked for me as a scientist, because I like to pay it forward because I had a great scientist and also supervisors in the early career stages that mentored me and sort of like guided me. If it wasn't for them, I would have been lost. So I can just place myself in the shoes of our new scientists, being in this world, and all of a sudden, if they see a job advert, there's HPCSA requirement. So what is the HPCSA? Why is it important to have it? And also maybe encourage them to get the HPCSA at early or as soon as possible, and not leave it until it's too late. So that's, I know public and private, you need HPCSA if you want to work in a diagnostic laboratory.
Yeah, that's true. Are there any aspects of the job that you find, okay, I think we've covered that. I was going to ask that you find particularly challenging, but it's finding funds while you're in there and sometimes being stuck in the early career bracket where they still see you as an early career because maybe you don't have enough publications, maybe you were on contract and never had like big grants and things like that. So yeah, I don't know if you
Yes.
agree with that.
Yes, I do. And also, yeah, maybe just as a hint for the new scientists or entry level scientists to be involved as many projects as possible. And also because then you get, or your outputs are advanced or increased, because then you could get exposure maybe to being part of a group that publish a research paper, or being part of a poster presentations that are presented at a conference. And if the team has money or the grant, there's more money, sometimes they allow you to attend a conference. So being actively involved in projects, as many as possible and as many as you can handle at a time, that's also a great way to get exposure to different fields and different supervisors and mentors as well. Because
Yeah,
I think, as you know, being part of a project, you won't publish in the same year. Sometimes the publication takes 2, 3, or 4 years.
yeah, yeah, that's true. And you kept going back to mentorship, actually mentor you through the program, but I'm not sure if this is how you found your mentor. Maybe if you could talk more around that, because I like you kept going back to it, and I agree it's very important to have a mentor because it's a very difficult space to navigate sometimes by yourself.
Yes, definitely. So I have to actually point out and give praise to my previous supervisor at the NICD, Prof. Olga Perovic. She was a very great mentor, and she sort of like knew all the roads and the leads between being at a university site and the NHLS site. So highlighting her and acknowledging her for her contribution and being a mentor, and also, like you say, putting time aside and having an open door policy to get advice on grants or a research career, or if there's a position available, it's like, will that be applicable to me as a scientist? Will you think that position will advance my career? So yes, definitely guiding me on a personal and a scientific level.
Yeah,
So
that
yes,
is very
I
important.
also try help, especially with honest students and new intern scientists. If they come with questions, make an appointment, set time aside, and also guide them to say, but these are all the options we have. This is, think about this. Also, not in the beginning when I've just started, you just with your undergrad studies, you sort of like just had a mental picture of, you have the medical science and you have the environmental science. But these days you have research and development where you can work for companies like Roche to explore or make new kits. You have the pharmacy where you can develop drugs. So there's and also your food sciences. So we are not limited with just one or two options. There's so much more out there.
Yeah, that's true. And oftentimes, as you say, when you're starting out, you're not sure, and sometimes you don't know that all these different fields are available for you to explore. And then in terms of, oh, sorry, yes.
So maybe if I can just add, going back in the beginning, I know in matric they normally ask you like, what career do you want to pursue? Are you going to study further? Which university? So being in high school, I like to attend from grade 10. So I was fortunate my parents supported me, and from grade 10, 11 and 12 I went to different open days of universities just to get a picture of the faculty of health science, because that biology was my subject that I loved. So I sort of like went into that faculty to get exposure to all the fields, like a medical doctor, what you call it, I think a psychiatrist, and all, just to see what's available and what sort of like sparked my interest. So, and also getting exposure to the different universities and get a sense of campus life, that helped me. But I think in my second or third year, I reached out to one or two people I knew that worked in the laboratory to ask them if I can come up, observe them for a day, just to see what's going on, because then I had more experience with my lectures and knowledge I've gained from undergrad. So I think it's too early to ask to go to a lab, maybe in matric, because you're still new, you have no idea what's going on. So maybe in your final year of study, ask to go and shadow someone so that you can get exposure, because you might think you are interested in medical microbiology, but instead your passion will be in medical virology or pathology or anatomy. So just get exposure to the different fields and the different lab environments.
Yeah, that's true. And I think maybe like with what we're trying to do, then we can also encourage universities to have this outreach programs or open door policies where people can reach out and spend a day. But what I think what you're also saying is we should encourage like high school students who, like, for example, you already know you're interested in biology, to go out and visit universities and see what you like and make contact. And sometimes I think that the challenge is not knowing how to start, where to start, and who to contact. So, yeah.
Yes, because it can be very overwhelming as a matric student, because you're
Yeah.
writing your exams and then you have to make a career choice, and then you think it will be for the rest of your life, and sometimes you have no idea actually all the options that you do have.
Yeah, that's true. So what opportunities are available for advancement or specialization in medical sciences that you know of? And then maybe you can just touch on common career paths um, but I think you've already touched on it, that are available in the space.
So I think my personal opinion, so I know they someone or the people might argue with me, but I think from an employer's side, they don't often push you to advance and grow your career. So in my opinion, I think it ultimately falls on you to take the initiative. So unfortunately, in South Africa, and taking myself as an example, this may involve investing in your own professional development and paying for courses out of your own pocket. I think as a scientist, especially on a platform like LinkedIn, and I know you African scientists also had a LinkedIn page where you share learning and teaching opportunities. So I think taking advantage of that professional platform, because if I'm not a lecturer or student at, for example, Cape Town University or Pretoria University, I won't get or I won't know about the free courses that's available. But if it's being shared on LinkedIn, I can say, oh, this is something I want to advance in, or I'm an entry level Excel user, I want to be a medium level, and there's a free course. And if someone shares it on LinkedIn, then I can subscribe. So I think as scientists, also sharing opportunities, teaching opportunities, courses, workshops, jobs that's available, that's in that way we can help each other as well.
Yeah, that's true, Michelle. That's very true. In terms of industry trends and advice, what are some of the current trends or developments that you think are currently shaping our profession at the moment?
I think definitely our next generation sequencing platforms. So that enables us to rapid identify pathogens, their resistant genes, and harnessing infection control, and also providing personalized treatment through genomic profile. I also know human patients cancer research, because then they can get targeted treatment as well. And also nowadays a big thing is artificial intelligence, or AI, as well as machine learning, because they can analyze complex microbial data that we as humans still struggle, and it will take us months, maybe years, and then AI can do it maybe in a week or a few days. Also, it can predict disease outbreaks, because it's trained in certain patterns, and it's not just local or in your hospital. It can be on a global scale. So I think staying up to date and also dabble with technologies and AI and machine learning, not be scared of it. But I also know it's computer language, programming language.
Yes.
So I think as a scientist, then you will have to take one step back and sort of like go into computer science, which will take us a little bit longer than, for example, IT guys that already knows the programming language. But I don't think it's impossible, but it will just take extra time. And unfortunately, I don't think all our employers will allow you to spend 1 or 2 hours out of your day to attend a course or do that, for example. So if you're really interested, maybe you can speak. There's always a way to accommodate each other, but mostly I think it will go into your personal time, maybe on weekends, to go and learn that. And also I think another option is the one health approach, taking animals health, animals, environment and humans into consideration, and see the intricate complex that we are actually one unit. It's not separate as we always thought it was.
Yeah, that's true. There was a One Health conference in Cape Town, and I didn't even know about it. I just came across it by chance. But definitely the One Health approach is growing, and it's one that we need to consider very properly and work on that. But I think it's moving. So how important is networking and staying up to date with industry changes? And what advice would you give to someone who's just starting out and wants to join in the field?
So I will say it's very important, because staying up to date with industry changes will also help you maybe with your research focus. And if you are applying for grants or want to narrow down on research or your expertise, you have to make it relevant. Because if it's not relevant and it has been done for the last 50 years, you won't get grants, and your research will just be another paper. Not that it's not important, but you want to advance and bring something new to the field. So so that's really important. So also networking, like attending conferences or attending university or faculty open days and research days. You can then network with local researchers, but at conferences like international conferences, you can socialize and interact with international as well. And that can also help you with knowledge sharing, professional growth, also maybe establish collaboration to have maybe piggyback on one of the international grants, but do a local South African study, or be part or bring in our South African isolates. But I know it's also complex. There's lots of controversy, international researchers just taking our isolates and our research without being acknowledged.
Yeah, that's true. In terms of networking, again, just going back to that, I think when you're starting out, because it involves money, oftentimes I think people don't feel like they get the chance to travel, especially international conferences. When they say, well, you're not quite ready to start traveling internationally, and it depends on funds. So it does also make it a bit challenging. But yeah, that's one thing we need to know about, and maybe talk to managers. It will also depend on the type of manager that you have. Sometimes they might be willing to encourage that so that you actually get the experience, because if you don't go, how else are you going to start learning to, be on the next level?
Yes, and I think also being part of research groups. So, for example, if they have a poster presentation or oral presentation, they are more keen to let you go because there are research output than just allowing you to go without any research outputs. So, yes, but I know funding, and you have to have your own grants to attend conferences, and that's actually unfortunate.
Yeah, that's true. And then as the pandemic has taught us, and we've come to realize, and now people are more vocal about the work-life balance, how would you describe the work-life balance? Like, is it easy to have a balanced life while being a scientist, or you have to mark your the postgraduate thesis over the weekend?
So I think it's difficult to find a work-life balance, especially as a healthcare professional, because you can experience long hours, night shifts, and high-pressure environments. So it just depends on the laboratory you work at. So for examples, we do have laboratories that operate 24/7. We have laboratories that don't have night shifts but are still open for 7 days a week. And then we do get surveillance labs that only 5 days a week, our normal Monday to Friday. So I think it depends as a scientist where you are based. But burnout can be a concern for these roles. So even though we can be vocal and say we want to work at home, but unfortunately as a scientist, we can't do a PCR or a DNA extraction in our kitchen. So we have to be at work to perform our duties. So if you're maybe a little bit more research focused, then there's more flexibility because you can do research and write a paper from home. You don't necessarily have to be in the office. So
Yeah.
I think as personally, yeah, it's difficult to find that balance because for me, also as a joint staff, you have your lab duties as well as your research duties. And also traveling far and not living close by work. You can't just be at work for 4 hours and then the other 4 hours you go home to do your research. So then it's sometimes just easier to continue at the office. But
Yeah.
also maybe for us, we are rostered. So we do work weekends. So then we are rostered as a team so that you don't work every weekend, but still on a personal level, making plans or going out to family or friends, you first have to check your calendar. If you're not rostered before, you say, yes, I'm attending or I'm going out with you. So it does interfere. So it's not always easy. But
Do
at the
you
end of the
also work?
day,
Do you also work
yes,
weekends?
yes, for the lab side.
Okay. You were saying something, sorry. I just, yeah. I don't work
Yeah, I think
weekends, so I'm surprised.
you're very fortunate and lucky. Yeah, so I think just on a personal level, sometimes or on a personal level, it does interfere because then you can't just say yes to a meeting or a family gathering because you
Yeah,
have to first check. And also sometimes if you're on a backup roster, if someone is sick, then you
yeah,
also have to step in. So
yeah, that's
I think
true.
also then if you are off to is respect each other's off time and not to bother everyone, only bother or call the person that's on duty for that weekend so that the people that are off do get rest as well and
Yeah,
are able to switch off their phone to
yeah,
recharge and
yeah. So, what qualities or skills do you think are crucial for someone to be successful as a medical scientist in South Africa?
I think the number one skill for me is strong scientific knowledge because that will help us in understanding protocols, regulations, um, HPCSA, working also in an ethical manner, knowing ethics and compliance. So that you will get training and exposure to as an intern medical scientist, and that you will take through up until your principal medical scientist, a head of department, so that you can uphold your ethical standards in patient care and data integrity. And that's a cornerstone of our profession, I will say. And then
Yeah,
also communication, project management skills, adaptability, networking and mentorship, attention to detail. But I think the skills I've just listed now will come as you progress as a
yeah,
scientist.
yeah, that's true. Um,
And
is
also
there,
then maybe, sorry, the last one is maybe managing a budget. That's also
yes,
important. You can't just keep on ordering kits and reagent and pay a staff member and then you won't have enough funding or
yeah,
money for 3 years and then you spend everything in the first year.
yeah. I've also heard that if you motivate for a project, maybe you get like 300, let's say, dollars. And then when by the end of the cycle you've underspent, they might actually say that you don't know how you use money because you haven't spent anything. So it's a balance of just the right amount to know that, yeah, I don't know. I found that interesting that they said underspending can also be a red flag for grants when you apply.
Yes, definitely. And also, who is handling your grants? Is it you personally, or do you have a third party? So they take a percentage each year of the grant as well. So also taking that into consideration, and not
Mm.
just you think you have 300 or $300,000, but then it's administration fees, it's maybe extra staff member that you hire to help you process, you're buying equipment, so you're keeping track of your budget is very important. And also, like you say, not spending it, and then you think you'll get another 100 or 300,000
Yeah.
dollars the second year, but then they won't give it to you because you
Yeah.
haven't spent it in the first year. So also you'll know the T's and C's. And also I feel then it feels like I need to be a lawyer, and that's something I'm not interested in.
Yes, it seems like we have to be, you have to sort of like be an accountant. You have to understand the law. So like have those things. It does require a lot. But I think what helps is that some universities have departments like the finance department and the lawyer department. I don't know what you call that properly in English. My English just went. But to
The
sort of like
legal
collab,
department.
yes, collaborate with them and have a proper plan when you have, especially when you have a large grant, so that everything is covered and
Definitely.
everyone is safe.
Yes, and you also know what's expected of you.
Yes, yeah. Um, is there anything you wish you had known before starting in this field that you think would have made it easier, maybe to sort of like navigate?
Personally, no, because I think everything worked out in the end. But maybe just in the beginning, just to know what options you have, and not just think, oh, a scientist is only like I've mentioned earlier, it's just medical environment. That there are
Yeah.
actually food research and development, pharmacology, and you can also apply your science as a veterinarian or a psychologist or a GP, like a general practitioner. So because normally when you're in high school, you only go for the main ones. You want to become a
Yeah.
doctor or a lawyer or an accountant, something fancy like that. But there are smaller parts. For example, like a general practitioner, they can become a surgeon. They can become,
Yeah.
you can specialize. So as a scientist as well, you can specialize. And also learned later on like medical microbiology, medical virology, and anatomical pathology. So there are different fields. You're not just stuck with micro where I am.
Yeah, that's true. There's a scientist who's doing veterinary sciences, and then she said something like everyone who's here wanted to be a veterinarian, and everyone who's like in our field sort of like wanted to be a doctor. So it goes back to like this field found me, but yeah, we all wanted to be doctors and veterinarians, and like, yeah, we ended up here.
Yes. But I think also you're reaching out and maybe, like you say, the universities and as a scientist as well, because I know you guys as well are now advertising and promoting and informing young scientists the different options we have, and also what's the difference between a laboratory scientist and a medical scientist. So kudos and well done for what you are trying to do and achieving. I think that's a great first step in helping our young scientists, because if we look back like 7, 10 years ago when we started, there was nothing like that. You just
No,
made a choice, crossed your
yeah.
fingers, and hope for the best.
Yeah, I remember telling my mom that after graduating, I'm going to do my MSc. She was supporting, but at the same time, like, why are you not looking for a job? Type of
Yes.
thing. So, yeah. And then in terms of professional development, how do professionals typically continue to develop their skills and knowledge? I think you really did talk about it, that it's self-driven. You have to attend conferences, you have to communicate and make sure you want to, I mean, make it known to your manager that you would like to do these things. Also, just make sure that you're involved in like a lot of research and different research that is going on. But is there anything you want to add on that in terms of continuing to develop your skills and knowledge?
Yes, maybe a boring thing and something not as glamorous is continue reading. Download the latest research publications, follow great journals like Nature, our South African medical journals, and just keep on reading and absorbing all the knowledge. And sometimes just go out of the box and not just stay in medical microbiology if I can use my own profession and read something about virology. So now with COVID, everyone read a little bit more about viruses and so forth, but maybe on cancer research, just something new once a month, and then keep up to date with your current field as well. What's the latest research developments? How are they using AI to detect maybe bacterial pathogens? And then, like you've mentioned, and I think we both agree on, is actively seeking mentorship. So if your current job or university don't have a mentorship program, maybe see or engage or go to a higher or older professor or someone that as a scientist you value and you look up to because he or she has multiple grants, has multiple publications, sort of like just go and ask for advice. How do I start? How do I get a research grant? Or if you are applying for a research grant, maybe if someone can be your sponsor or a supervisor that will make the grant feel more relaxed because the senior is sort of like supervising you and guiding you. I think just getting that first grant will help you get the second and third and fourth grant.
Yeah, that's true. Um, we did touch on this, but do you think there are mentorship and professional development programs that are available in this field, or at least enough of them, so that a lot of people are exposed to them and are aware that they are available for them?
Not that I know of, but reading the mentorship from the African Institute of Medical Scientists, or in short, AIMS, I know you guys are trying, sort of like encouraging and offering mentorship programs, but definitely I don't think we have enough. And
Yeah,
also, all the more experienced scientists and professors and researchers don't want to set time aside because they are too busy with their own projects. So
yeah,
it's actually like a catch-22. And when we start a program, we don't have all the scientists and the more experienced scientists buying into it. And then sometimes we do have scientists that wants to give back, but there's no mentorship program.
yeah, that's true. So I think it's something that we need to work on, and as I will call us like early scientists, because um, it's just the year thing. We sort of like see and have like an experience in this field where we've seen how important it is to have access to mentors and have access to programs of mentorships and things like that. So I think it's something we need to collaborate on and make it more visible and make it more accessible to the ones that are especially just coming in.
And also, I think maybe starting small without
Yeah.
having a big or a formal mentorship program. Start with you as a scientist personally, maybe with a new BSc honors student, because I think all our departments are exposed to honors students, master students, PhD students. Maybe in that app, just start chatting with them and ask what's their 5 or 10 year plan. And say, from my personal experience, I can advise on this, or there's NRF grants available for funding. Just share your own personal experience without having a professional platform. Because I think as scientists, we sometimes don't think highly of ourselves because, oh, we just started, we don't know much, we
Yeah.
aren't a professor yet. But I think it's still valuable, even though if it's just in the passing or a quick lab conversation,
Yeah.
sometimes you can change someone's life or offer grant opportunities or funding opportunities that we're not aware of.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that, Michelle. Definitely. What resources or organizations do you recommend for future learning? Are there any tips of resources and organizations that you're aware of?
Yes, so I know FutureLearn is a great online platform where you can access different courses. The majority of the time it's free of charge. So any scientist can attend. It doesn't matter if you're undergrad or postgraduate. And then they also have different fields of interest. interest: bioinformatics, Python, antimicrobial resistance. So that's a very nice platform that I often use as well. I also know of the Wellcome Connecting Science. They are based in England. So they also offer the majority of the time free courses, or if there are greater courses that involves international exposure, they do charge a fee, but I will say it's definitely worth it. And then some local African Center for Gene Technologies, also our local universities. If you follow their pages on Facebook or LinkedIn, or subscribe to their email communications, you will also receive paid and free versions of workshop or training courses. And then also, as scientists, just share what you know and see on your own platforms. And then I think also a great one is Diplomatics, also a South African platform that's also giving training and hosting workshops. So that's a few I know of.
I don't have any that I can think of, no. So we've covered everything on what we had. Is there anything you want to add in terms of anything that you can think of about being a scientist in South Africa? Maybe if you could talk to where do you see this field going, and what we might need to work on to improve and make it more visible.
I think as a scientist, there's exciting new things happening in South Africa and internationally, especially with bioinformatics. So my tip, and that I'm also using, or I'm trying to advance in my own career, is learning more bioinformatics skills. So I've recently paid, unfortunately out of my own pocket, but I've attended the Linux course for command line, so that we can run pipelines and use my whole genome sequencing data in a more effective way. Because unfortunately, also bioinformaticians in South Africa is scarce. And also, if you want to advance, that's also a career path that the scientists can involve in or change to, because we have a very strong science background, and that will help with the analysis of whole genome sequencing data. Doesn't matter if it's viruses or bacterial or fungi, we still have that scientific background. But I think also taking my own personality into consideration, being shy, is maybe ask more questions, go and speak to your fellow scientists, professors, more senior scientists, and ask for advice. Because the majority of the time, in my experience, people are very open to sharing and helping and giving tips. So use it to your advantage, because if you don't ask, you will never know.
Yeah, that's true. That's all from me. If you have a project that you want us to collaborate on, please reach out.
Definitely. Will do.
Yeah.